How are you? I am under the water. Please help me. Here too much raining.
One of the most common issues with many horror games is their lack of consistency, be it poor world building or plot decisions that make the player question everything that is happening on the screen. And when this happens, it rarely amounts to something good. Suspense of disbelief is what many horrors live and die by, especially when it comes to the paranormal themed games. And once it's gone for good, and you may never view the events of this game in the same way as you did before. This is exactly what happened when I finished playing Fatal Frame, Maiden of Black Water. The game centers around the mysterious Maohikami, a location loosely based on the infamous Aokigahara Sea of Trees. The forest surrounding Maohikami is considered haunted, and for many years people went there to disappear forever, and it's up to us to unravel the mystery of this wicked place, and go through all the twists and turns in the face of three people, that being Ren Hojo, Yuri Kozukata, and Miyu Hinasaki, each with their own reasons to go to the Cursed Mountain and the surrounding areas. Throughout the game we get to visit many locations around Maohikami, like the derelict inn that was burned down by its owner, or the seemingly abandoned shrines, where rituals were held for people who came to the mountain to end their lives. And this is arguably the best part. The mystery, the atmosphere, the build-up are simply amazing. I honestly cannot recall when was the last time that I've had such an uneasy feeling while playing a horror game. The toned-down colors, the dark contours of trees and the abandoned buildings are complemented by eerie music and sound effects that never let you feel safe. And when all sounds come to an abrupt end, you know that there is something more horrifying waiting for you. Heck, even such simple things as opening doors and picking up items are so intense that I could make a separate video with just the characters trying to pick something up or open the door, as you always wait for something to grab you, or someone waiting behind the closed door. It's the masterful camera work, along with amazing sound design, that really make every action in this game feel creepy. I feel that the game has to be like this, evoking your deepest fears and making you wish you never went to Maohikami, giving a false sense of relief once every chapter is complete, and making you value the moments when you're accompanied by someone. I honestly could not stomach Maiden of Black Water for more than 2 hours per play session, and at times per day. I wasn't scared in a regular sense of this word, but it felt like the daunting atmosphere was too much to handle at times. I understand that it sounds bizarre, and longtime fans of the Fatal Frame series will probably scoff at the fact that I was terrified by one of the weakest games in the franchise. But this was my first experience playing a Fatal Frame game, and one thing I can say for sure. I'm sort of happy that the arrival of my physical copy of Mask of the Lunar Eclipse was delayed, as I think I'll need a short breather from horror games after this one. If we look at the gameplay, then what we essentially get is a walking simulator, where from time to time you have to cosplay as an Instagram photographer who decided to film some old Japanese mountainside attractions in the middle of the night. The combat is pretty simplistic. We use the magical camera obscura that has the power to exorcise ghosts inhabiting Maohikami and the surrounding area. And just like in real photography, it's all about finding the perfect angle to deal the most damage. This approach to the combat is what makes the Fatal Frame game stand out from many other horror titles, as you don't get to use any traditional means to defend yourself. There are some upgrades like a faster load time, increased damage and range, that you can purchase for the points that you get after completing each chapter, as well as additional power-ups and lenses that are scattered through the levels. This game also has a gimmick revolving around water, as according to the lore, everything is connected to it. Life begins and ends in the water, with people coming to the mountain to become one with it. This leads to some interesting mechanics like a moist meter that shows how wet the character is. If you're soaking from the rain or fall into a puddle, the spirits from the netherworld will go full Charlie mode and attack you more frequently when you try to pick up items.
Baby! That's what I've been waiting for! That's what it's all about! Woo!
It's a neat idea, but doesn't add much to the game, other than the possibility for the players to look at people in wet clothing. Add to this a number of revealing costumes that you can buy, and it becomes clear that this game tries to cater to teenagers, lonely people, and of course, complete degenerates. Oh, wait. I of course wanted to say man of culture. Now, the main gameplay loop is where I have some questions. Like I mentioned earlier, the build-up and the overall presentation are simply amazing, and work well to enhance the experience of visiting the haunted mountain. But that's the thing, you literally spend almost the entire game going through the same locations time and time again for practically the same reason. Go find one of your friends or missing people, then you find them, escort back to town, rinse and repeat. Sure, there are some chapters that mix things up, like a couple of Five Nights at Freddy's segments, where you monitor the cameras in a small antique shop to make sure that ghosts don't attack the girls. But most of the time, it's literally the same song and dance. Walk in, solving some basic puzzles by taking photos of certain areas in order to find the key or break a spell from the door, fight some ghosts, which stop being scary after a few encounters, and then glorified escort segments with tedious backtracking. This would be okay if there weren't so many of these repetitive sections, and if they didn't affect the story that starts off strong, but then stumbles and never seems to go anywhere, almost until the very end, where it feels as if the writers crammed about a quarter of the entire plot into the last chapter. The pacing is really off in Maiden of Blackwater, and I can't shake the feeling that the same story could have been told in half the time it took to unravel. This is another issue of many horror titles, overstaying their welcome and dragging on for way longer than necessary. It inevitably makes the player rush through the later stages and become impatient, which leads to frustration. And do I really need to explain that this is not the kind of feeling that is usually associated with horrors? It doesn't help that the story itself feels half-hearted, with the lore of the game presented via small snippets of information in diaries and books is way more interesting than the main plot. It was fascinating to read about the ancient rituals and how everything in the Mount Hikami area is connected with the water, how important it is not to let the tainted black water to overflow, and that in the old days, shrine maidens were sacrificed to maintain the balance and keep the water clean. But the main story is pretty chaotic, with it randomly jumping between characters and not really explaining their motivations. Some are called to the mountain because of their dreams, while others are hoping to find their loved ones, who then again go to the mountain, and then again you have to find them. It's like the developers were given a task: make a 10 to 14 hour game, no less. And they did, but at the cost of stretching out the story so much that I could barely tell you anything between the first and the last couple of hours. Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater has got to be the hardest game for me to talk about. On the one hand, it does such a great job at building up the tension and creates a feeling of never-ending dread that forced me to take breaks from the game every couple of hours, and the lore of Mount Hikami is brilliant, contributing to the overall atmosphere. On the other hand, the story turned out to be pretty inconsistent and never seemed to go anywhere. Add to this a rather disappointing ending that felt rushed and incoherent, with many conclusions coming out of nowhere without any proper build-up beforehand, thus killing off any momentum that the story picked up near the end. Like many horrors, Fatal Frame Maiden of Blackwater is awesome in some aspects, while falling short in others, which makes the overall experience enjoyable only if you're willing to look past its weak points and go into the game without any big expectations. This was my first Fatal Frame game, so for a first time experience, it was fine. What's your history with the Fatal Frame franchise? If you have played any of the games, let me know your favorites in the comments. Thank you for watching, and please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Take care, have a great day, and remember, only play games that are worth your time. See you in the next one. Bye.